to our podcast, Inspiring Living with me, Mark Candelaria. I'm an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I'm the founder and now partner of a fabulous 25-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country. We have hosted tours to Italy, Spain, and now Napa over the last 20 years, and in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. Our podcast is about all the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture into all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. Sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all the opportunities that are there just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired every week. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. Because Inspiring Living is all about the people and organizations that inspire us, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances as one of our new sponsors. Anytime we do a new kitchen or a kitchen remodel, Monogram Appliances are what we recommend to our client. Their appliances are the definition of luxury, meticulously detailed, using the finest materials and an ownership experience that is second to none. And I'll tell you what, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances trick out our new demonstration kitchen at our office at Candelaria Design. They're going to make that place zoom. I tell you, I'm looking forward to cooking there. I just had the experience of cooking on their appliances at the Iconic Life Dine and Design event over at Expressions Gallery. And I tell you, that was a fun event, by the way. And using their equipment was spectacular. I mean, I had such confidence, and everything turned out perfectly. So I highly recommend them. This is how Monogram is always thinking ahead and inspiring and elevating the kitchen experience. Because at Monogram, they don't just elevate one thing, they elevate everything. Welcome, everybody. It is Christmas week. We are here. It is the last week coming up in December, the last week of the decade. We're going to be in the 2020s coming up here in just a few days. It's crazy. Happy Hanukkah also to all our friends. And we have a real special podcast to close out the year here. Actually, we're going to have one more on the 31st where we're going to pick the winner for our Spain tour. So please give us those subscribes, those screenshots of the subscribe, the reviews, and we'll get your name in the drawing. And we're going to pick someone to go to Spain with us for 2020 in our June Spain tour. So you definitely want to get in on that. We've had a lot of people send us in their screenshots, and thank you for all those subscribes, and thank you for the wonderful reviews. We've gotten quite a few, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, we are here in Sedona, Arizona, at the Enchantment Resort, which I designed back in the early 80s with my mentor and former partner, George Christensen. Bless his heart. He passed away in 2004, I believe, on December 28th. We're going to be celebrating, I guess we're not really celebrating, but we'll be marking the 15th anniversary of his passing. And I'll tell you what, I've been getting some fun pictures from people who saw that I had posted about him in Sedona here on Enchantment. And so thank you for sending those pictures. They're awesome. I love them. I cannot get enough George pictures. So if any of you have great George pictures, please send them my way, okay? Anyway, I'm here with a very special person. We've come up here every so often, right, hon? I got Isabel with me here.
Yeah, every now and then we come up.
And we came up on Friday, and it's Sunday night, and we're going to head back tomorrow. But we've just had a fantastic weekend, haven't we?
We have really relaxed. Which is very unusual for us.
We have, definitely. Well, our podcast today definitely talks about all of this. It talks about balance. It talks about taking care of you first. And we just listened to it to kind of prep for this introductory that Isabel and I are going to put together here. And she talks about balance, right, hun?
She sure does. And I can't really emphasize enough how important that is, especially, listening to her and physically everything she went through. And, physically everything I went through,
right,
trying to maintain achieve a balanced life. I mean, it is difficult, especially if you're an overachiever.
Yeah, and it never, it's always ongoing because things are always coming at you. So you're always having to work at seeking that balance. I mean, you can't just find it and then live happily ever after. I mean, life just keeps happening. And so I think what I loved about this weekend is we took time to just be us and come up here and, just virtually kind of check out and have some fun. And we were at the spa all day. We checked into the spa at 8 a.m. and we left, about 6:30?
I think so. I mean, we got a lot of rest.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I mean, you got an intuitive massage. Is that what it was?
Yes, it was very cool. She had a message for me, which is I'm already starting down the bad path of not taking care of myself, for instance, going to work, not taking time to eat, just kind of overdoing it. And it was a good reminder for me to check in and be sure that I am trying to be cognitive of doing simple things like getting enough rest and taking breaks and eating.
Yeah.
I mean,
taking care of yourself.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what her podcast talks about. I mean, I think you're going to find this has been one of the best podcasts I've ever done. This is my 18th one, so it isn't like we've done a ton, but she is a dynamo.
She is dynamic.
She is dynamic.
She is the definition of dynamic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I hope you listen to this podcast. I hope you take away some lessons learned. She unfortunately learned them the hard way. But I
don't know. I think she kind of talks about how you have to go through hardship to kind of achieve a better state.
Yeah, and everybody does. Everyone goes through their share of hardships. And I think the thing that I got from her is she learned from each one of them. She didn't just woes me and that's the end and that's the end of her story. She's learned from each one who she is and how she needs to operate to make her the best person she can be.
And it as if she wasn't a powerhouse before.
Right.
Now, wow, she is a powerhouse.
Yeah. So
very incredible, very inspiring, and I just love her story.
Yeah. Any Christmas wishes?
Always peace on earth.
Peace out, right, baby?
Peace on earth.
No, I mean, we're looking forward to a nice, quiet Christmas. We're not traveling this year. We had a little getaway up here, but we'll be with family over the next week, and we'll be getting ready for 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still got to work on our goals. We were going to do that today, but I think we just were in spa mode all day today.
We were in veg out. We just veg.
We vegged out totally.
Yeah.
So we'll work on it this week, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we wish all of you a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and we'll be back on the 31st for a quick podcast and kind of end the year and start the new year. So, all right. Stay tuned. Here comes Letitia Frye. Okay, I have a super special guest today, someone I have admired for many years, and she has graciously accepted my invitation to be a guest on the podcast. She is currently celebrating over 14 years in the auction business and having raised over $500 million for charity. Letitia Frye has truly earned her title as the Auctiontainer. I like that. The Auctiontainer. I always talk about architainment, too.
You do?
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah. So I've got her here. She is a beautiful, elegant, multi-talented, bilingual English-Spanish woman who is a big success in a field generally occupied by men. She has an innovative flair and treats each event as a special performance. Today, she's found on stage with such notable, recognizable celebrities in the world, including actor Johnny Depp, musician Alice Cooper, rocker legend Robby Krieger of The Doors, and many, many more. I bet you have a long list you could give us, Letitia.
I do. And actually, I'll be back on stage with Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper on Saturday night.
Oh,
and Alice
cool.
is the one that gave me the title Auctiontainer.
Oh,
that's
neat.
It's funny.
I was just with you basically last Saturday night at the Smoka event, who our good friend Oscar De La Salas put together.
Yep.
Did a fantastic job, given he had to deal with the rain, the wind.
Oh, so many things
storms.
going wrong on that one.
Oh
A
my
mic
God.
that didn't turn on.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I did national anthem like that once.
You did?
Where the mic didn't turn on at a Cubs game. That was
my
fun.
goodness. That's funny.
Yeah, so you know what that stress is all about.
Yeah, I don't sing, but I do know the stress.
So anyway, I am so happy you're here. I was
Thank
at
you.
your event, the Women's Achievement Award, I think it was called.
Yep.
And you were obviously one of the ladies who won an award.
Yes, I
received
was
an
being
award.
recognized. Rick McCarthy runs that, and with his In Business magazine, and was honoring the lifetime achievement of Cindy McCain, well deserved. And
Yep.
I happened to have been one of 14 of those women that were being honored, and then one of the 6 that was chosen to speak.
Yeah, and your speech is amazing. And that was one of the reasons I reached out to you right then, and I said, you've got to come on our podcast, because your speech at that event really, I mean, it went right to the core of my soul of what, you know, I know my life's been about. Your life is amazing, and I never knew about it. I knew you. I knew you on the stage. I knew you from auctioning, watching you, and I always said, that woman is amazing. Her energy is so awesome. And then when I heard this story, it all kind of made sense to me.
Yeah, and it's funny because the speech I gave, which, by the way, I didn't write. I'll kind of get into that with you, how that happened. It was just an authentic moment. But the goal of that was to sort of pull that veil down of who you think you know
Right.
versus who is actually there.
Right. That's what caught me.
Yeah.
Is, you know, I've gotten to kind of know you from all these galas that I
Yeah.
attend. Now you attend a lot more than I have to. And I say have because I used to love going to them, but as time goes on, it's like, oh my God,
course.
another gala. You know.
Of course.
But you're the part I actually look forward to.
Thank you, because that means a lot. Because sometimes it's really hard for me, because when people see me, they go, oh, there's an auction. And it's just really, I kind of go, wow. I mean, I'm just here trying to help other people and doing my job. And I work all over the country. I live here, and I love to work at home, and I love the charities here. But I do about 113 a year in all
Holy
50
cow.
states, all over the place, sometimes in Canada. So it does kind of make me feel badly sometimes, or if someone sees me out, or if I'm just attending something.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it's okay. I'm just attending. It's
Well,
okay.
What I always love is your energy.
Thank you.
Like I said, you are an entertainer. I mean, you are very effective, but you are also extremely entertaining.
Thank you. I actually am a theater major from USC, and it's
Okay.
funny, when I chose that, like most parents choosing a expensive private school, my dad's like, really? Can't that be a minor? You know, can't we be majoring in business and minoring in theater? And I said, no, this is my passion. It's been my passion since I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
And so having that theater degree, after, years of bouncing through modeling and then trying to make it in LA and trying to do theater in New York and really just waiting tables the whole time, while this career was not one I intended to be, when it did find its calling and find its way into my life, I had to find a way in order to actually infuse that performance with it.
Yeah,
I
that's
couldn't
perfect.
just do it without actually putting my love in it.
No,
And
I-
accidentally, I ended up basically doing what I always wanted to do, which why I had the theater degree, was to entertain audiences from a stage and somehow give back to humanity.
You do it. You do it as well as anyone I've ever seen.
Thank you.
So let's back up. We're going to talk about that speech a little bit, but I want to back up and talk about where you were born and how did you get into this whole thing. You mentioned it a little bit with the theater thing, but let's go
Yeah,
all the way
it's
to
pretty much divine intervention. So I am actually born just across the bridge from San Francisco. Marin County General was the hospital I was born in, and my family left when I was very young, I think just before I was 2. My parents were really only married long enough to have me. And so they were both remarried by the time I was 4 or 5. And so I had 2 families growing up, but predominantly lived with my mom and my stepdad. Both of those families resided in Connecticut. So I lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut, went to high school in Westport, and that is basically my home base. But my mom and my stepdad also had a home in Vermont, so we were skiers, and they had a home in Puerto Rico. And so from an age of about 7, a good portion, 3 months out of the year, were spent in Puerto Rico. So that's a lot where my Spanish comes in, my bilingual as well.
Interesting. I was wondering about that
Yep.
part.
And so I took it in school, but being around that so many friends that spoke it, and then at 15, I was old enough to become an exchange student, and I did so in Spain. And that family I lived with did not speak any English whatsoever. And so
Perfect.
after 2+ months over there, I became completely bilingual, and then chose to actually take a minor in college in Spanish in order to keep that going.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, very, especially in Arizona. And let's face it, I use my language.
Yeah, I would
definitely
love to
do.
go to an auction where
It's fun in Spanish.
Yeah,
It is fun in
can't-
Spanish.
I think
It
that'd
is.
be really interesting.
Yes, we are called subasta. That is auctioneer.
So where in Spain were you?
I was in Vigo. Vigo
that
is
is.
just above Portugal, literally
Oh.
so close to the border. Major shipping area, import of Spain. In the summertime, when I was there, they go to an area called Playa Las Americas. Beautiful cobblestone streets and very, very old Spain. Had a chance to go through, of course, Marbella and Sevilla and Barcelona, other areas. But Vigo, it's kind of the unknown city, but it's actually a very large seaport area of Spain.
So kind of in the northwest corner of Spain.
Right. Literally, you could. Portugal's like 20 minutes away.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So we spend a lot of time in the north part of Spain in Asturias, and then we love San Sebastian. So we spend a lot of time
beautiful,
there.
beautiful.
So do you go often?
You know, I haven't. I've only been back to Spain a couple of times. I'd like to go back. I do feel there's only a couple European areas that I think I could live in, and Spain is one of them.
Me too.
Ironically, thanks to a couple of years ago, thanks to Facebook and social media, my friends from when I was 15 as an exchange student all found me, and they all are still there. They're from wonderful families. So it'd be really fun to go back. It's one of the areas I haven't. I've been all over Europe with my children, and that's one area I haven't. I'd like to actually be able to get back together with all of them.
Yeah,
it was a big influence in my life. It really was.
It is. It's that culture, something about that culture that really inspires you.
And Puerto Rico had a similar culture. And Puerto Rico, when you are out, you're out with grandmothers and parents and kids and little kids. And when you do a party, all those age groups are there. When you have like the Volta where you walk hand in hand, very much similar. And so when you're a teenager, it's like, wow, I've got a moped and I can go to a disco. And, you know, it's just very much because it's very multi-generational celebrations.
I love that part. I love that aspect of Spain and Italy.
Yeah, and it's in the same way in the islands. In Puerto Rico, it's very much about family, and it's about music, and it's about food.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really a great culture.
Seeing all my favorite things, right?
I know, right?
Yep. So so you did the exchange thing. You're 15. Let's move into this
so
whole thing.
My whole thing is this: I actually went across the country to USC, and so I wanted to get away from Connecticut. I was 17 years old, and I head to USC, theater major, spend my time there. And what I learned after 4 years there is that I really didn't want to be in LA. I didn't last there long. Went back to New York, and at the time, I had met my best friend in college. We had never dated in college, although he wanted to. And so now I'm in New York and he's in LA, and we end up dating. So at the age of 26, I married the love of my life, and we decided to compromise since he was still in California in Southern and I was in New York. We wanted to start our life somewhere new, and we went to San Francisco. So we were in San Francisco for about 5, almost 6 years when the .com era exploded and we lost our shirts and we lost the house we were building in Tiburon. Scottsdale became an option as a very viable place. We were trying to have children. By the time we moved here, we had one little girl, just a couple months old. And so this was, at that time, around the year 2002, was a wonderful time to move here financially. DC Ranch was just being built. We had bought a lot there. We were building a home. And that's how my life came out here. Now, I had my son once I was living here, and you would think I had it all figured out. I really, it's very
Sounds
funny.
Pretty good.
Well, looking back, it's funny when your purpose is waiting for you, pulling at you, and you think you're just going to design your life over here and hide from your purpose. No, you're not. So here I was, married, 2 children. I had a children's clothing store in DC Ranch. I had my husband. I thought we had everything figured out. You know, we were at the club, this and that. And then along comes a friend and says, I would like you to come be the MC at an event. Weston Kierland had just opened. That tells you how long ago this is. Just opened. And I was modeling at the time with the agency Arizona, and I used to model when they started the lifestyle tent at Barrett Jackson. And whenever I would go, we would get day passes. I would go early because I would listen to those guys on the mic, and I'm like, oh, something about the auction sound. It was like pulling at me from like,
That's
it almost
so
was like,
interesting.
almost deja vu. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why is this doing this to me? So I never really saw a woman do it. I was not someone that was able to witness. The only female auctioneer at the time, Amy Assiter, that was there, I never saw her do that. So I would have that going, and I get asked to come and do the MC by someone who was my college roommate back in the USC days, who was now here. You might remember Jennifer Kroll when she had her boutiques. So she was throwing Party Gras under the palms. Weston Kierland had just opened the whole shopping area. Yeah, about 15 years ago. And I was supposed to be her MC. She had 4 live auction items, and her auctioneer did not show up.
Wow.
And so she turned to me and said,
You're
a theater major. I've seen you play everything at school. Get on the stage and do it. And I did. And I really just was trying to get through it. And it's funny. I hate to say you never forget your first, but it's true. I had a puppy. I had a flat screen TV because they had just started coming out, a dune buggy, and a trip to Hermosa Beach. And I got up there, and no one was prepared for this woman in the velvet pants and the bustier and to just start sounding like a cattleman. And I did it. And when I got off stage, about 5 people asked me for a card. And I was just like, having fun. It was just like,
Right.
wait, we pulled it off.
Yeah, you got through it.
Yeah. And little did I know that was divine intervention, literally divine intervention. That moment in time changed
So did you know
everything.
that? Did you have a feeling?
Something was happening on the stage. It was far too natural and felt so good. But I really thought it was a ruse. But when I got offered, people say, I'm sorry, do you have a card? That kind of shocked me. And at the time with the agency Arizona was Margaret Merritt. And so then people started to call Margaret and say, hey, you've got that model. Maybe she can MC and do the auction. And so at first it was for free. I was
Right.
kicking around. Real estate agent Bob Nathan was doing auctions. He had gone through auction school. I had not.
Interesting.
And he actually chose to do it as a method to thank his clients that purchased house through him. So let's say you're buying a multi-million-dollar house and you or your wife sit on the board of a nonprofit.
Right.
He's like, you know what, by the way, I'm your auctioneer. How about I say thank you and I do this for free?
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we kind of started to Lucy and Desi it, so to speak.
Yep.
And do this event together. And we were just doing it for free. But for me, it started to become, something was happening to me up there. And as the more that grew, Mark, it's really fascinating. My life that I knew it started to crumble apart. And so it's that Phoenix process. As I think I'm just sort of heading into what seemed like a harmless, fun thing I'd entered into, my marriage started to fall apart. I closed my children's clothing store. Everything that I knew was crumbling to the ground as this new sort of sense of self was starting to rise.
Isn't it interesting how that happens?
Very, very
Yep.
much so. Yep.
Yeah, there's an underlying spirit, I think, that guides us. And I don't think a lot of people tap into it. But I think when you do tap into it, that's what happens. The other part of your life kind of starts to vaporize.
Well, it's interesting because Oprah calls it the whisper, and I call it the voice. And it's this little nagging feeling in your gut that's kind of letting you know, wow, I'm ignoring something. And so you try to hide in your normal life, and there's pieces just pulling and pulling. And one day you realize I'm not being my authentic self.
Right.
And there's something in me that's got to come out. It's got to come out. And you start listening to that voice gets louder and louder and louder. And as you start following it, all that other things you were hiding behind start just crumbling and fading away.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's not easy.
No.
We like to say we live in the city of Phoenix, and there's a phoenix, but if you think about the mythical creature,
Right.
it means burning to the
Yeah.
ashes.
Yeah, and then rising.
Yeah, and then you get this beautiful bird that comes out on fire. But no, you got to go through the ashes first.
And you've gone through some ashes.
I have gone
and
through.
that's what you kind of talked about at that Women's Achievement Luncheon. So
I did.
let's go into that a little bit.
So
Because that was amazing.
Thank you. And I'll let you know a little bit for listeners that are out there that weren't part of this speech. I want to explain the setup of this luncheon. For the past few years, there's honorees of women that have achieved a lot in business, and then they pick about 6 to them, sometimes 8, and you're asked to do a TED-style talk.
Right.
Now, anyone that knows TED-style talks are 18 minutes. These are cut down to 8 minutes. So it's really kind of your journey in a real quick bubble. And so they have a coach that helps, and I had only got a chance with my schedule to go to one session. And so when I got there, all the other women had written a speech and got up and were doing it, and then this fabulous woman named Rachel, who is a professional speaker, kind of helps them. So with me, I don't do that. Even in my performances, I work more of deep diving and sort of where are we now and what does the audience need to
Right.
hear. So I didn't have a speech, but I did record on my phone points of when I was talking about my journey that were resonating with people. And one of the gems of that crowd was that one of my nonprofit clients was one of those speakers. So she could tell me some feedback from her perspective. And one of the things she said is, look, we all know exactly what you said at the beginning of this podcast. We all know the Auctiontainer. We
Right.
know you in high heels, walking across the
Yep.
stage, don't need any notes. We know that. She said, have you ever stood still and spoke? And I'm like, that's like asking a vibrant Italian to speak without using their hands. I'm like, that doesn't happen,
Well, I like how you kicked off your shoes.
that was organic and never practiced and never thought
Interesting.
out. And so
You just felt it at that moment.
I just felt it. So the interesting thing is that I had wanted to and originally have Rachel read the speech that I wrote of the quote.
Right.
And for those of you that are listening, it's a quote that's really about a man and was given to me from a man, and I switched the word. And it's about basically living with no balance. It's sort of like the art of the master in living is what it's called. And it's talked about, you don't know whether she's working or playing.
Right.
To her, she's always doing both. It's up to you to decide. And this is a quote that I had really modeled my life after. I had really blurred the lines between work and myself and the identity between the two, and there was zero balance in my life. And I actually just came from a meeting from a nonprofit, and I did an event on Sunday from another, and I looked at 2 women that are at a point that 7 years ago, if you told them where they're at, they would be like, wow, that's my dream. Both of those women cried to me. Both of those women said, I'm falling apart. There's
Yeah.
no balance. I don't know who I am anymore. I can't do this. that was me. When you go in that, and it's careful what you wish for, you go in without balance, you go in without parameters,
Yep.
you put no line between yourself and your work. About 7 years into it, and that's about where I was, you're going to be riding this wave and all these dreams are coming true, except you're not even able to even remotely be a part of it because you're lost.
Right.
So let's talk about those ashes that started to show up. So I do believe now that I can say this on a different side, that when adversity comes into your life, oftentimes you most likely didn't realize you invited it in. For example, if you sat down and in your prayers you said, I prayed for courage, and the next thing you know, 4 people have, completely, for lack of a better term, screwed you over, and you're left out in the thing. Guess what?
And you get the courage now.
Now you've got courage. So I had prayed for a couple of things, and I certainly wasn't getting hit by a car while jogging, but sometimes what you ask for and what you're seeking is going to come in the most unexpected way.
Right.
So I do tell people, when adversity shows up at your door, there's a good chance inside of that is exactly what you're looking for.
Yep, that's exactly
it takes a lot, and unfortunately you're going to have to go through the flames to find it. So for me, November 27th of 2014, because it was just 5 years, it was Thanksgiving morning. It was also happened to be my real father's.
I was thinking about you because I read that biography, and I was thinking about you on Thanksgiving morning.
Yep. And this year the day fell right before Thanksgiving. And so again, this is the first time I ever said this on the stage. I should never have been out running. I mean, that's the part that I think everyone knew I was hit by a car, but what they didn't know is really, you've got to go out and just do 3 more miles. I run, like this last week, I ran 64 miles last week. I'm 50 years old. I love to run, and it's definitely a place I meditate, and it's sort of my God moments, if you will, or for people that don't refer to God, you can call it going back to source. It's going back to center.
Yep.
So for me, really that day, I was engaged to a man that I knew from college. It's one of the stories. 25 years later, I ran into my sweetheart from college. The irony in that, Mark, is that sweetheart from college is how I met my husband, because they were fraternity brothers. And so I ended up dating him. It was Thanksgiving morning. He lives in Southern California. My ex-husband and I were best friends. He had just come back from his father's funeral in Chicago. And that morning, I got my kids dressed, because you're talking about 5 years ago. My kids are now 16 and 17, so you're talking about 11 and 12-year-olds.
Yep.
So for me to go disappear, I run 7-minute miles for 20 minutes around the neighborhood, no big deal. I had them dressed in their finery. We were having Dad over for bagels and lox and doing all of that, and then he was going to drive us to the airport, and I was off to see my boyfriend, who was my love of 25 years ago, and how I was introduced to my former husband.
Interesting.
So there it goes, except I decide, well, I need to throw in 3 miles. Not that 10 miles a day before was enough. I'm going to go loosen up. And there was no reason to do that. And I went out, and while I was out, I was bouncing up the sidewalk, totally stopped, nowhere near, and of course, micromanaging everything, texting my boyfriend and saying, please buy your mom flowers. Really, that's my part in my message. Do you have to do it all? Do you need the cape?
We all do that. The
We do.
overachievers, we all tend to just like, well, I can get that squeeze in. I can do this. I can get that. Like,
Yes. And that's an issue. And that's, again, a lack of balance. So the young man named Douglas, who was waiting there, he was stopped. I was stopped. I was running north on Hayden. I live in North Scottsdale, and there were 2 cars coming about 55, 60 miles an hour straight towards us. Honestly, it's not like anyone was moving. And what happened was, as they got closer, I assumed that, okay, he's never going to go. The cars are right there. And as I stepped into that crosswalk, he looked at his watch. And he was supposed to meet his girlfriend's parents for the first time on Thanksgiving. Of course, he's nervous. He's a young man. And it was 10:45. And so he decided to gun it. He made that decision just as I made the decision to get in there.
So simultaneous.
And literally, again,
yeah.
I hate to say it. It's like divine intervention. I've talked about it before, that I almost feel like your higher power, God, in my case, was literally about to say, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you, but this is for your own good. And as I stepped in, I felt the grill of the Audi. I'll never forget the Audi. I had like an Audi tattoo on my legs. Coming at me. And it's one of those things, as a runner, I've been running since I was 7 years old, you always think about. And I literally said to myself, this is happening. And so as I said it, I let go. I said, don't fight the car, go with the car.
Yep.
The last thing I can remember is being upside down, because I remember how wide the driver's eyes got. Like it looked like
You
there was
could
no
see 'em.
pupils, just whites everywhere. His eyes were just huge. And I saw him trying so hard to pull me away from that cars that were coming, because my body was about to bounce off his car on those cars and back. I don't know anything else. All I know is the next thing I know is that sound, if you're watching a military movie, that high-pitched sound after like a mortar goes off in someone's ear, I still can't listen to it. That's the sound that was going on in my ear. It's this really, really high pitch, as if someone blew like a gun next to your ear.
Yep.
I had later found out what happened is I was upside down, did hit one of those cars. He pulled me with him. I went back, smashed his car, smashed his windshield, bounced off, and landed on my head after going like 10 feet in the air. I landed directly on my head. So when I came to, that sound was going on in my ear. I looked all over. One of my shoes was like...
So when you came to, where were you?
So I was sitting on the ground.
Okay.
His car, I could see, was all smashed up, and he opened his door right by me. I could hear screaming. It was very, very vague what was going on. I knew that there was unbelievable pain in my head. My shoe, one of them was 10 feet away on the right. The other shoe was on the left. My hat was over there. My phone was smashed. My headphones were over. And I just remember my head. And he was trying to talk to me, but that loud, high-pitched sound was so loud I couldn't hear anything. And so I said my head. And as I reached back, I felt like, I'll be honest with you, why is there warm Jell-O on my head?
Oh, my God.
And as I pulled it forward, I saw bits of my head. And so I passed out.
You went to shock.
Yep. And so from there, ironically, I took a little journey. I can't tell you without a doubt that it's the other side, but I can tell you, for me as a child, my favorite place was my Aunt Justine's farm. And I used to go there when I was about 3-4 years old, and I had these red kids. I was a complete tomboy. So I came to in the body of myself about 4 years old, 3-4 years old, with my red kids on in my Aunt Justine's field. And it was the sound of wheat and corn blowing, and it was so beautiful. It was the most peaceful feeling I've ever had in my life. And it was swaying, and there was like light, not sunshine. It's like
just a glow.
A glow, exactly, like a glow.
I've had a similar experience. Not as traumatic as yours.
It was unbelievable. And this sense of like, if you could make love a physical like thing, it's like I was in love. Like not in love, but like in the essence of love. It was the safest place I've ever felt. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave. Whatever was happening back in my human body, I was not there.
Right.
And so then all of a sudden, it's not voices and it's not presence, but they're there. And they kind of almost communicate in like a feeling. They like make you understand through feeling. And they're like, nope, you're going back. And you're like, no, I don't want to go back. So what happens to me was like, it was like a birthing tunnel. You get pushed and you start going away from the light, and you go in reverse, almost like you're going through birth. And the light is going further away, and you're kind of almost going through this tunnel, and then boom, you pop out. Now, unbeknownst to me, Douglas had carried me over. He saved my life. He had carried me over and put me on the sidewalk. The firemen were now there. So as I'm coming back to consciousness, I hear this boom, boom. What that was the fireman's boot walking around my head. And so this is what I call my Charlie Brown moment, because it was like that wah, 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 wah. That's what it sounded like. Because you're looking at them and you're kind of coming into focus, and he's trying to say something to you, and he's like, wah, wah, wah. And then suddenly you realize he said, do you know your name? And it starts to come in, and the head is just killing you. So I can vaguely remember a couple of the questions. I remember being asked my name, and I didn't know. I remember being asked if I knew where I was. I didn't know. But interestingly, because I only went to Aunt Justine's farm in the summer, and I was wearing shorts because it was about 74 degrees that day here on Thanksgiving. So they said, do you know what season it is? And I said, well, I looked around and said, well, it's summer. I mean, it must be, right? We're all in shorts. I was from the East Coast. So then they said, you know who the president is? I said Nixon, which I think when I was 4 might have been right.
That's about right. Yep.
So wherever I was in my mind and time,
that was your reality.
My reality at the moment. So I remember raising funds for the level 1 trauma at John C. Lincoln Hospital. And I volunteer for all my clients. So I went and volunteered for a day, and I learned about this stopwatch that they start when you're level 1 trauma, because they only have a very limited window before brain damage is permanent. So I remember at the gala, we used the stopwatch to show you how limited the window is, and that they ask these questions, who the president is, do you know? And then the final one, at this point, you're getting irritated, because they said, would you know what, when they said what season it is, what they were trying to hint me is, hello, it's Thanksgiving Day.
Right.
So at this point, I'm just irritated with them. And then they do this whole like wrap her up. And what that means is you're officially now, the clock started and you're about to go level 1 trauma. So at this point, I'm going to Osborne. And if you think of where North Scottsdale is, Hayden up by Pinnacle Peak, how far Osborne is down to Old Town, I'm in there. They can't get, my veins are collapsing. They can't get fluids inside of me. It was just the most bizarre experience. And then I did at least have enough wherewithal to think we must have passed a hospital by now. And at that point, no, we were going
You're
level
still
one
going.
trauma.
Wow.
Oh, we were going level one trauma, which is a whole nother level. So that whole incident happens. And one of the things I want to say for anyone that's listening in this podcast and you have someone, a loved one that has a head injury, I don't care if it's a concussion from a sports incident with a child, if you hit your head on a desk. I mean, you can read Ariana Huffington's book. She hit her head on a desk and had it. Please don't listen to them. They think they're making sane decisions. They are not making sane decisions. You absolutely think, oh, of course I can go back to work. Of course I can be cooking dinner. Of course I should leave the hospital. No, you shouldn't.
Take it serious.
So I didn't take it serious. I don't even remember the first auction I was at. I had staples in my head. My head was shaved. I had called my hairdressers to come try to make a comb over, if you will, to try to help me.
How soon after this all happened, you're back up on stage?
6 days later.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I don't remember being there.
Wow.
To this day, I don't remember being there.
So that automatic part of you kind of kicked back in, and you just did what you always did.
Yeah, I did, and I paid for it dearly.
Yeah.
So what ensued from there, because it's like, here you are, we have a message from above, I'm going to smack you over the head and catch your attention, and I'm going to ignore you.
Right.
So what happens? I had vertigo, and I don't mean kind of vertigo. When I would get on the stage, the entire audience was like a Titanic, and it all started at the Super Bowl here on January 20, I think it was like 27th or 28th. I remember 2 months after I was hit. And I got up there ignoring everything. I've been going a million miles an hour. I had moved. I wasn't listening at all. And I had a seizure on stage. And so I caught myself. I went to step off the stage. And actually, I fell off the stage. But I caught myself on the back of one of the directors from St. Jude, because that's who it was for. And he was like, wow, you really grabbed hard. I didn't want to tell him, well, because I was trying to save my life. My tongue dropped. My eyes rolled back. But I was able to kind of catch myself. The audience went upside down as if we were on the Titanic. And everybody's flipped upside down. And I was just trying to say, okay, you can do this. Just hold on to people's backs, walk through, and just get through this. So I did get through it. When I was done, 2 people from Barrows were at the event and looked at me and said, what's going on? And I pulled them aside because my pupils were all over. And they said, no, we called Barrows, and they sent me. Curtis Dickman, actually, a good friend and former doctor there, called and said, no, she's going in.
You were at the right event.
I was. And so basically from there, I go into Barrows, and they tell me, I mean, here, you think about this. I'm at this point, let's see, so 5 years ago, I'm 45 years old, and they look at me and said, you've had a stroke. I'm like thinking, doesn't that happen to like 85-year-olds? Yeah. And I was like, what? So as it turned out, after the next day of some more diagnosis, I had not had a stroke. What they think is possibly like a mild, you can have almost what's called silent strokes. Mm-hmm. They're mild inside, and definitely had an event. So again, didn't listen, didn't slow down. Now I'm at the point where my children are watching. If I wanted to make them breakfast, Mark, I would crawl on the floor I would shake to pour orange juice, walk into walls to try to go to the restroom in the middle of the night. I mean, it was horrible. I started having panic attacks. If I went into Walmart with my kids to the Vision Center, and Walmart, there's a reason veterans always say why they have a hard time in Walmart, because Walmart's designed to get your senses going. So there's smell of like cookies and hot dogs, and then there's eyesight. Everything is about getting your senses.
Stimulus overload.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I'm in there, and the walls started melting. It was like Alice in Wonderland, like someone had given me acid in the 60s. Everything was falling apart. And so this is your reality. And yet when people look at you, you look as sane as you do sitting right here, right now. And you just smile, and you're like, you have no idea what's going on. So you really start to question, wow, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. So I had post-concussive syndrome. I had PTSD. Yep. I had a vertigo. And then I ignored it. And on April 2nd, I was at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco working for them in front of former Secretary of State George Shultz and all other people. And I had another seizure on stage. And it happened again. This time I was listening. This time I'm like, I can't live like this. Right. I can't live like this.
You don't know when it's going to happen.
No. And I had children. What I'm supposed to drive them to school? How can I be doing this? And I'm faking it. And this is the large part. And again, audience, if you're listening, this is what my speech was about. This is the first incident that I'm going to tell you about. But here's the deal. Because there was no line between me and my company, if anyone knew that was going on with me, I was afraid I would lose 7
The
to
whole
8
thing.
years of everything I worked for.
Yep.
When the truth was, I should have been more honest, taken a break, because the fact that I wasn't listening is what was going to cost me my company.
Right.
But I hid everything. I hid everything, because if you think something's wrong with me, you'll think something's wrong with my company. And I couldn't let that happen. So here's what happens at the expense of that. Finally, I start listening. I go to alternative brain mapping. Because I had lost my hearing in the right ear. That ringing is
Yep.
because I hit the pavement so hard, and my muscles in my
ear.
ear had,
Yep.
my eyesight had atrophied from my eyes, and my hearing went out, and I had a stutter for a while. So I went through physical therapy. I went through ocular therapy, which, if you don't know what ocular therapy, Dr. Neha Amin, if you have a concussion, you need to look that woman up on the West Side. She specializes in helping your eyes learn to train again, to train your brain. Amazing work. Of course, not covered by insurance, but because they don't recognize it. And I'll tell you what, it was the one thing
Yeah.
between that and brain mapping saved my life. Saved my
I'm
life.
a big proponent of therapy as
Yep.
opposed to drugs and prescriptions. I just think
Well,
therapy
here's
is
the
amazing.
thing. You leave the hospital with a brain injury, they slap you full of
Oh, yeah.
Percocet, Vicodin, and Xanax. And
Pays their bills.
yeah, and so that's a lethal combination.
Yep.
No, it's a whole bunch of bad. So basically, as you're following along through this, so that's tragedy, okay? Great, but I'm still not listening to my body or any of the outside forces that are trying to tell me, find some balance, slow
Right,
down.
right.
Ironically, those of you that know and may not know who Tom Shadyac is a very, very successful and famous producer from Hollywood. If you saw Evan Almighty and you saw Ace Ventura, those are a lot of his works. Now, for those of you that are listening to this, and you can Google his documentary called I Am, Tom Shadyac had an accident very similar to mine, except he was on a mountain bike. In fact, he was just on a podcast, Super Soul podcast with Oprah, discussing this. He went out in search of life's meaning. Now, we know each other because his brother is the CEO of the fundraising arm of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. His father was the first. So he's at the events, and he had this accident, and I had seen the movie, so I was looking for him like for an answer, and he pulled me aside backstage, and he said, Letitia, I want you to think about one thing. If you could put it in one word, what was taken from you in this accident?
Right.
And I said, well, if you put it in one word, vertigo, I lost my balance. And so Tom looked at me, and he's a pretty intense, really cool guy. And he goes, did you ever have any in your life?
Right.
And I looked at him and said, no.
So you didn't lose it.
And so, no, he said, that's why God took it from you.
Yeah.
You need balance in your life. So figure out what was taken, get that in your life, and the vertigo will go away.
Interesting.
And he was right.
Wow.
So I started to balance my work. I started to balance my life. I started to say no
Yeah.
and figure out and prioritize my health. And lo and behold, the vertigo disappeared.
Interesting.
But here comes number 2. Because
Okay.
you see, now that the vertigo is gone, Letitia's like, well, I'm just going to go back up and climb the
I'm
mountain.
back
Here
at it.
I go.
Yep.
Throw that cape back on and off we go. Now you get to 8 months post the accident.
Yep.
I'm finally back to myself.
Yep. Feeling good.
Feeling good. I always, with my ex-husband, we still celebrated our wedding anniversary because we told the kids that's where they came from. We were best friends. I had come from them still with that boyfriend who's now my fiance.
Okay.
And for those of you that are listening, I'm just going to throw one thing that wasn't in the speech on this. The reason my fiance, then Jeff, and I got back together, we ran into each other in an auction in Orange County 25 years later.
Wow.
He had not dated a woman in 3 years because one of his brothers had died by suicide. And he had actually shot himself in the head. And Jeff was the one that found it. So when I came across Jeff, he was very much in trauma.
Yeah.
Had been 3 years. He never cried over his brother's body. And so I came really as a sort of teacher to kind of help heal him. And that's important for you listening when you hear the next adversity that showed up at my door. So here I am with a man whose family was devastated by suicide. I've gone through the accident. I'm now back to myself. My ex and I usually have dinner for our anniversary, except I'm supposed to leave for Nantucket in 2 days. A lot of the signs were there. I just didn't see them. I said, can we do it when I get back? And on the 21st, our anniversary was the 20th. The 21st, I got ready to go to Nantucket. And so we had said goodbye. Again, a lot of the signs were there. I'm finally back to normal the next day. 7:30 in the morning, I leave. He lives less than a mile down the street. The kids at this point now, now we're at 13 and almost 12, 13 and 12. So he'll be there in an hour. No big deal. They're having breakfast. I walk out. He'll be right in. And I land after you go through Boston, and you have to take a little seaplane out to Nantucket. And as I'm out there, Mark, looking at the sunset, I had been studying a Hindu goddess by the name of Akiwan Dishavari. It means the goddess of never not broken. Because my therapist, and again, I'm going to go on this, not just physical therapy, mental therapy too.
Yep.
I'm a huge proponent of going to a therapist and still do.
Yep.
So she was telling me about this never not broken to study because it was about when you're smashed to pieces,
Right.
it's an opportunity in there to pick up the people, places, and things that you want to become a better self. And it's the fact that she can be broken apart that
Right.
makes her more powerful every time.
Interesting. It's always the irony. in
An
life.
irony, right? So
Yep.
I'm sitting there in the plane and I'm looking at the sunset over Nantucket and I'm thinking, why do I think that really wasn't the challenge? Why do I feel like that was the warm up? Well, I was about to find out.
Yeah.
I land and it's 5 o'clock in our time zone in the summer, and it's 8 o'clock in Nantucket, and my home phone rings. Nobody knew my home phone number except their dad and myself. It was an emergency phone. That's it.
Yep.
My son calls and I said, what are you doing home? Daddy never came. And I'm like, son, it's 5 o'clock at night. What have you done? He goes, well, we know we're not supposed to cook, so we made top ramen and we're playing video games, but he's not answering his phone all day. And I said, well, did you call home? He goes, Mommy, I don't know the home number. Because again, we just used home numbers as emergency. And so I said, all right, hang up. Let me get someone to the house. So I called someone that went to the house, called another friend, and then I kept trying to find him, and I couldn't. And then I actually called his younger brother, who he and his wife and children had been transferred for work from Southern California to Arizona not that long before, and he went over the house, and he said the garage, everything's locked. I said, well, I will give you the code to the garage. Keep me on the phone. Unfortunately, as Carl walked into the house and he's calling his brother's name and I'm on the phone listening, he suddenly started to just scream. And I myself thought, well, what's going on? Is he had a heart attack? Like, give him mouth to mouth. And he was just screaming bloody murder and said there's blood everywhere. So for you out there listening, the long and the short of it is that my former husband, my best friend, and the father of my children put a bullet through his head. So what I talked about in the speech that a lot of people didn't know outside of that tragedy is that because that was a rental, because he was being evicted, and because there were a lot of things in his life that had gone very, very wrong, things that, again, and I'm going to go on a limb and just tell you, suicide is a permanent answer to a temporary situation. Yeah. So please, please remember that. And if you're feeling that way, do ask for help. I know what it feels like. So we decided, we had to get in there and get it cleaned up. So yes, myself, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, literally physically cleaned that up. And I cannot begin to express the amount of trauma and PTSD that shows back up when you are literally picking up pieces of somebody you love. And ironically, I'm engaged to a man who had to do that. So he's walking back through another scene that's
you didn't
very...
tell me that part of that story.
I know. It's irony.
Yeah,
so it gets thicker, ladies and gentlemen out there in the audience. So we went through all that. So now what we did is we took my children, to view their father's body. And I brought my fiance. And as he sat over his friend from college, he was finally able to release and cry and grieve his brother.
Wow.
And it gets better because then we go through that and I have to go again, not tell you what's going on. My PTSD came back. My vertigo came back. There's no way my brain wouldn't instantly check back into that because seeing that whole scene was just flat out trauma. Yep. Well, I'll say something else for those of you out there. Once you experience trauma, particularly a blunt force of trauma to the head, it doesn't matter after that if it's emotional or whatever, it will trigger everything back. So whether you get hit again in the head or whether you actually just go through a traumatic event, it comes back. Right. So here comes the vertigo. Here comes everything again, except this time I come from a place of experience. I've got a roadmap. I've gotten out of there before and I've got a roadmap. Still not entirely slowing down to the point I should be, but I've got a roadmap. Right. But I cleaned that up. But again, I'm not separating my work and myself. I'm not letting anyone know what's going on. I'm smiling. I'm getting on stages. You all are upside down and I'm handling it. And not letting you know out of fear. When all I had to do was be honest. My clients would have stood right by me. They would have helped me. Nope, didn't learn the lesson. So here comes lesson number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Now I get introduced to somebody 14 months after that death. My fiance and I didn't make it. I mean, there was just too much there. And honestly, we're friends. He's a wonderful man. He got the resolution he needed. He came full circle with his brother's own death. He was able to heal. He's doing fantastic. His family's doing fantastic. And he's a wonderful person. But all of that was just way more than we could handle. Right. So at this point, I'm single. It's 14 months later. And I get introduced to this great guy. And everyone starts calling him the keeper because he was fun and we took dance lessons and he came to all my events and he was gregarious and just kind And the thing that I loved about him is that on our first real date in San Francisco, he lived in the Bay Area, and I was there for work, and we had already met, and we agreed to meet again. And he said to me one thing. He said, I have something to tell you, and most women, if you can't handle it, this date will stop.
Right.
I have a transgender child. And I said, you mean to tell me you're in the picture? Like, you're an active part of this child's life? He's like, yes, it's my child. I immediately was like, this is the one, because I work in the LGBTQ community, and I had actually been given an award helping 2 transgender kids not choose suicide at a camp. I got an award sitting on my desk for this. The irony's coming, kids.
Yep.
So I said to him the one question I wanted. So you're on a plane with your loved ones. The plane's going down. What do you do? He goes, oh, it's simple. I put my arm around them, tell them everything's going to be okay. Now, my last fiance and I had been in therapy, and when I asked that question, he goes, I can't lie to you. I go, but it's not a lie. How do you know you're not okay? He goes, I can't do that. So that was my big, what I was looking for in someone. Just tell me it's going to be okay.
Yep.
So off we go. Life, suddenly the roses show up, the music comes back, we blend our families, our kids, we do Christmas together, we rent a house together out in the summer for Santa Cruz, and life is literally, I'm thinking, this is it. You got your happy ending. Yep. Everything is beautiful. And then that child that was struggling and finding his identity in the world chose death by suicide.
Jeez.
And so now we go back through it, and the irony is this time. So you have the fact that my previous fiance had his brother die and then stood over the body of my husband to help release him. Now I'm standing over the body of a 17-year-old child. And as I listened to his father wail in front of me, 2 things happen. One, I realize I've just lost the keeper. He's never going to make it out of this. How could you? And he's also the one that found his child. Number 2, I realize I have my children. And right then and there, over that body, exactly what Jeff got over Steve's body, I suddenly was released. And my grief stopped. I literally was able to gain the clarity. It's weird, 3 together, back to back. Yep. And so what would ensue over the next year and a half would just be the loss of the keeper. God bless him. And I spoke about this on stage. Again, no line between me and my work. Well, in his case, he has a traditional job, and California is so good about giving you sabbaticals. So for him, he went to human resources, said, I can't hold it together. So they pay him for 3 months. They give him insurance for 6 months to go wander the earth. And he's in Australia right now. He was in Paris last week. He's been in Hawaii. He's been in Vegas. He's off to Oregon. And so what I said on stage that day, for those of you that are listening, with no line between me and my company, when you find human resources, go ahead and find janitorial services, payroll, and everybody else, because it's me. Yeah. And again, the type A, I can do it all. I have a cape. I'm doing this. There's no line between me and my company. And again, at what cost? And so guess what came back? The vertigo. No balance, Letitia. How many times does God have to hit you on the head or show up and say, please learn balance? Right. And then I want you to go out and teach it to others. Right. So it's very strange for a woman who had no balance to now be the face, if you will, the poster child for balance, which I can honestly tell you in this room right now, I have balance in my life. And I made enormous sweeping changes both in my professional life. There is a divide line between me and my company. The word no comes out of my mouth.
Well, that was the word I was just going to say. I think that's the hardest thing for overachievers to learn is the word no. I have a hard time with no.
Have to do it. I
did no today, this morning. I don't know if it was because I think you were coming, and I just said, I've got to say no, and I did. And I felt really good about it.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Proud of you.
But how do you do that? I mean, that is a lesson that I think a lot of people need
what
to
I said on stage. And again, this is for me. It doesn't mean that this is the formula for you. Right. So I was one of these people, type A, and I'm going to go to bed, and I've got I'm doing work in bed, and I've got the TV on, and this and that, and I stopped all of that. For me now, every morning and night, I begin my day immediately when I wake up, I'm on my knees. I pray. I pray first in gratitude for everything that I do have, including the people in my life that I do have. Then I set out on prayers for people that are struggling, and at the end I pray for myself and my family. Then I listen to very good, quiet, uplifting, calm music off of Pandora, and I ease into the day. Now listen, with my schedule, I might have to be up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I could be in any state to travel. I still take 30 minutes before I get up. Doesn't matter if I'm in a hotel room or home, and this is my practice. I have a little speaker I bring with me. This is my practice, and I go out of the day the same way. I get on my knees. There's no more watching TV in bed. There's nothing. I might read or journal a little, but there's no work that enters my bed. None of that. That's my sacred place. and I ease out of my day the same way in prayer. Now, for me as well, like I'm not good at meditating, but praying I can do. When I run is the closest I can come to meditation. I clear my mind.
Yep.
I do exercise 6 days a week. That helps as well. But here's the thing. I'm going to go flat out and tell you the truth because that's something that I do. When you, particularly moms that are listening out there, somewhere around the time your children are 2 or 3, happy hour was invented by a mom. All of a sudden, you're having wine a couple nights a week. The next thing you know, you're having it 7 nights a week. And it was a wake-up call for me with teens when they set the dinner table and automatically there was a wine glass in front of my seat.
Yep.
I said, why'd you do that? They go, well, Mom, you always have a glass of wine with dinner. I said, but you know what? That's not right. So here are the sweeping changes that I made. Again, these are for me. I don't drink 4 to 5 nights a week. Some nights, look, I just turned 50. Did I drink that week? Yeah, I did. It's not that, but it was about balance. If there's no reason to, then why bother? The other thing is this. In all the travels I used to do, I used to take Ambien CR to sleep. I have not taken Ambien in over a year. And guess what? I sleep like a baby. Sometimes we're doing things that are actually impeding us rather than helping us, but you're just doing it because you're on autopilot.
Yep.
Please stop. The next thing that I did, no Xanax in your life, nothing like that. Then it was time to balance out certain friendships. You have to take a look. And again, Akiwandi Shavati, she's broken in a million pieces. What was I doing? Picking up the pieces that are healthier for me. It's called a healthy annihilation. But here's the deal. You don't have to wait to be hit by a car. You don't need double suicides in your family. You can do this right now. It was asked of me recently, why do we become our best once we're faced with being our worst?
Right.
You don't need to do that. If this Christmas I can impart one thing, because I really am not a resolution person, if I make a resolution, it's like kindness or things like that. I want you to think about this. Don't wait to be hit by a car. Don't wait for vertigo to get balance in your life. What are the things that you're doing in your life, people included, jobs included, saying yes too much? What are the things that you can change that can literally allow you the capability to become your best self? Because I look at people from the outside, particularly a lot of entrepreneurial women I work with, and they have kids, and they have a great husband, and they have the job they've always wanted, and the 2 women I was just talking about, and they are lonely, they are isolated, and they are miserable because you're not taking time for you. So here's the big part that happened in that speech. I learned, and I cried when I said it on stage, it's hard not to cry. I learned how to hold myself and say, you know what, the plane's going down, and it's going to be okay.
Yep.
I learned how to show up for me.
Yep.
I learned how to say,
Put
I
your
love
mask
you.
on first.
Yep. I learned, exactly. And I learned how to look in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yep.
You're worth it. I've got you, and I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time, it's been 6 months. I haven't dated anybody. I have learned how to take care of me and mean it. And I know at this point in my life, sure, I'd love to date again, and I'm ready to get back out there. But the point being is that I need to be complete in who I am.
Yep.
And what I was doing in the lifestyle I was living in work and no lines. And the major part of this speech that came out was in that gay camp that I volunteer at, a young woman, because I don't wear makeup. I don't have my high heels. All these signature things that any of you know me, think you know me from. It was a brand I built. That's my fault. But that's not who I am. And she said, it's so great because I get to know Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And on stage, everyone laughed. But as I said, being Spider-Man's exhausted, and I started to cry. And I said, I really like Peter Parker.
Yep.
And I told them, I'd like you to meet Peter Parker. And that's kind of a now an acronym and a sort of something I teach, but it's also in our house that we talk about. I'm Peter Parker.
Yeah,
I have days where I just want to be Peter Parker. I do not want to put on the heels. I don't want to put on the makeup. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to show people the other side of myself because it's exhausting to maintain
so
the
much
other.
energy that it takes on the other side when you could be Peter Parker and use all that energy to be the best Peter Parker that you can
exactly.
be.
And you know what's
versus spreading
interesting,
yourself
Mark?
in 2 people.
Here's what's happening. On that speech you were at, the next day I got texts from the governor. I got texts from all kinds of people. I got texts from a lot of men that said, wow, did I need to hear that?
Yeah.
I also ended up, it's still happening. Your own wife wrote me a beautiful letter. I had letters I wasn't expecting, but even at the event you're talking about last Saturday, 2 individuals, don't know each other, totally separate times in the night, came over and said, one had seen the speech, one had not, and said, I'm on Instagram, and those of you that want to follow, it's at Letitia_Frye. There's a T in Letitia, not a C. But I'm very vulnerable, just like I was there, and very honest about therapy and balance and all those things I do on my Instagram page. And they both said, I'm never going to hit like. You're never going to know I'm on there, but you're helping me.
Yeah.
And please don't stop.
Yeah, the likes
You're
don't
being
matter.
honest. You're being honest.
Yep.
And so I think those of you that haven't ever seen Brene Brown on Netflix, do yourself a favor. Learn about vulnerability, but it does take courage to do it. What I did that day instead of writing a speech was just be honest. And so those of you that are listening, I kicked off my heels, and that was authentic, Mark. I just thought, you know what? I'm going to stand still.
Yep.
and I'm going to take off the heels, because in the heels, in my case, that is my cape. In other words, I built a brand being known for my heels. And the last magazine cover I was on, I asked if they didn't mind if I shot it barefoot.
That's cool.
Because I'm really trying to pull that image off.
That's good.
And help people understand perfection is not a goal at all.
Yeah.
And please don't, because you'll get lost in the midst of it.
No, and I think one thing you said too that's just struck me is, I think if everyone took that time in the morning, 30 minutes or 20 minutes, even 10 minutes, and then did the same thing in the evening to find your balance, sit down and
back to source.
Yeah.
Yep.
And who is the Peter Parker in me?
Exactly. And so the thing
take
too,
that time is to do that. You don't have to do some monumental prayer.
No, exactly. And here's the point what I'm trying to say. And so that's why I don't want to alienate anyone in the audience that God might not be your thing. That's totally fine. That's why in therapy they call it source.
Yeah.
But here's my point. And those of you that are listening, how many of you right now, whatever you're doing, driving, listening to this, sitting at home, can honestly tell me that you take time for yourself every single day? When do you take time for yourself?
I would say 95% of the people out there do not do that.
Yeah. And so if you make a ritual out of it every morning, every night, what is an hour out of your day for you?
Right.
I mean, really, it's...
From what you're going to gain from it?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's
and
amazing.
And it doesn't take long is the thing I found too.
Yeah.
Is all of a sudden you bring that clarity and focus into who you are and that time for yourself. It just does so much for you.
It does. And it's interesting. The other thing that if you're listening, I love to mentor women in particular. I mentor men too, but I mentor for free. It's something I do. I've mentored over 65 people into either the lives or a career they wanted or whatnot. But one of the things I noticed with all of the people I was mentoring, suddenly they were losing weight. They stopped smoking. And I was like, I never mentioned any of that. And here's why. One of them said to me, she said, and she used to have no teeth and was on a forklift, and she's got a beautiful smile. She's got a great job, But she said to me, well, I knew as soon as Letitia Frye believed in me, it was going to be okay. And I said, aha, you just gave me my answer. I said, I don't mean to, pull the rug out from under you, but that's not the truth. She goes, what do you mean? I said, the moment you thought I believed in you, that's not what changed. You started to believe in you.
Right.
And when you do, suddenly you want to eat better and you want to make better choices. Like, why did I suddenly do all those things to get balanced? Because I want it to be better. And the better you feel, the easier it gets.
Yep.
And I promise you, if you could just take some time for yourself,
Yep.
say no to that one thing, wake up 30 minutes before. It's interesting. I beat my alarm clock every day because my body now almost looks forward to that moment.
Well, it's so rewarding.
It is.
When you feel it.
Instead of, I used to have trouble sleeping because we all know when the monkey, like, let's say it's 4 a.m. and the monkey suddenly goes, you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. And you suddenly now you're like, great, now I can go back to sleep. When you know that the beginning of your day involves calm.
Right.
And the end of the day involves calm. When that 4 a.m. wake up things and you think, what do I have to do? Oh, that's right. Pray and sit on my knees. You just go back to sleep.
Yeah.
You don't think about the other stuff.
Well, what I've learned too is the more time I kind of put into that calm time, the calm time tends to start growing.
Precisely.
Both ends
Good
of the
begets
day.
good.
Yeah.
We
And
are
I can
energy.
find in the middle of the day, if I can find 10 minutes just to have some calm and all of that just adds up.
It's imperative. And if you make it a daily practice, the point being, we attract whatever you're doing and thinking, you're attracting more of.
Right.
And again, that's why I said, be careful what you put out there. Try to come from a place of love. And the first place you can come from a place of love is for yourself.
Yeah.
I know that right now it's kind of PC to say self-love, but I can guarantee you that if you ask someone to define it, most people cannot. Self-love equals self-care. What is that? It's time for yourself.
Yeah.
Time.
Yep. So your message is amazing. I love this so much. What I want to know is what's next for Letitia.
So I have a book coming out. In fact, I was fortunate enough in Scottsdale Lifestyle Magazines just did a whole summer reading thing because my book comes out on July 6th. It's called No Reserve, which is an auction terminology. And for those of you listening, what it is everything I learned through all these adversities, I wrote down, and I basically tried it on 65 different people I mentored. It works. So I came up with practices and methodologies that I teach in the book on basically what's meant by a no reserve. If you're in an auction and you put a reserve on it, it means a price you won't go under.
Right.
So my book opens up at an auction and you're sitting there and you're like, wow, I wonder what they're going to auction. And the first item that comes up is your life.
Awesome. I love that.
And yeah, we want to think, I wonder if you lived your life right in order for it to go
the
highest bid. And the question for that is, what reserves did you put on it? In other words, where are you selling yourself short?
Yeah.
If you tell life, well, I'm only willing to do this, then that's all you're going to get.
That's it.
You got to take the reserves off. So the book is next. The speaking has really started to take off.
When's the book coming out roughly?
It's actually July 6th, July 6th, 2020.
Perfect.
Pre-orders are already. Again, follow me on Instagram. You can go to my webpage is letitiafrye.com. You can go at Letitia
and we'll add all this to our story notes.
You'll get it all. All pre-orders start in the spring by March, and the book launches on July 7th. Now, just so you know, this is not a self-published book, anything like that. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, everyone has a book. This is actually from Sound Wisdom Publishing, one of my favorite writers and one of our Valley icons, Sharon Lecter. Her book's amazing. She's one of my heroes. 10 Feet from Gold is one of my favorite.
Awesome.
It's the same publisher that she has, so I was very honored as a first-time author to be in that same pool because she's one of my heroes. And between the book and speaking, what the idea is to evolve more into that. I just always wanted to help more people.
Yeah.
So my auctions help a lot of people through financial gains for those that would go without.
You're doing a ton.
I'd
Trust me.
really like to. But again, interestingly enough, I'm doing different things, evolving through and balancing out between the two, because my goal is not to be doing more. My goal is to be doing enough of what I enjoy to take more time to myself and family.
Right. What I see is you're condensing what you used to do all over the place. You're condensing it into these little crystal pockets. And it just, I think it accomplishes so much more. Yeah.
Again, balance.
So you have the time for yourself.
Exactly. And again, every day, I mean, it's a commitment to myself. And now that I'm doing it, I really can't imagine not doing it. And when I was on vacation for my birthday, you know, I still managed to do it most days, but a couple days I didn't. And I just through the day, I thought, I'm really kind of off today. And that's why. And just so you know, too, when Mark talks about my energy, I don't drink caffeine except for like 2 sips of a real Coca-Cola before I get on stage. So this energy that I have is natural. And I've always been like this. But how I get it is by taking the time to slow down and by my running. Exercise actually brings me more energy.
Yeah,
and
it makes a big difference.
Yep, and I feel better the better I care for me.
Yeah, so this podcast is coming out right before Christmas.
Yeah.
Do you have a message you want to send out as we kind of close this podcast?
I really do. In the season of giving, everyone that's out there hustling, bustling, and buying gifts, do yourself a favor. Why don't you get something for yourself? Even if that is a lunch alone, a movie alone, a book alone. That's another thing, something that I was about to post today. There is a quote that all of us, it was said by Gandhi, but for some reason we only say half the quote. And the quote is live as if as if you're dying. Live as if you're dying.
Yep.
What people forget is there's a second part of that quote he said, and it's live as if you were to die tomorrow, learn as if you were to live forever. So I read about 3 to 4 books a month.
Good for you.
And reading is another fabulous way. Continue to learn.
Yeah.
So this Christmas, what I'd like to challenge any of you out there with, and particularly as New Year's comes right behind it, give yourself a gift this year. Give yourself the gift of self, time with you, and then as your resolutions approach, try to find out what it is in your life that's inhibiting you or stopping you from truly becoming who you need to be. If there's a little voice whisper that becomes a shout inside, listen to it.
Yeah.
Listen to it.
Well, Merry Christmas. You're one of
Thank
my
you.
superheroes for sure. And I wish
Peter
you a
Parker.
happy 2020.
Thank you. I think it's going to be a great year.
too.
I have no doubt for you as well. And it's been an honor to be on this podcast. Please, for those of you that are listening, if you enjoy it, continue to come back to Mark's podcast. He's really got some amazing messages. And a happy holiday and safe holiday season to everyone. And remember, balance. Don't wait to have that lesson learned.
Thank
Get
you
it now.
so much. Okay, all you can say is wow to that podcast. Letitia Frye, you are definitely the dynamo. I love watching you do your magic when we're at a gala. I mean, I go to the gala just to watch you, to be totally honest with you. I mean, I think you're the most entertaining part of the whole damn thing. And I love auctions anyway, but you make them really fun. And so I just love that you are seeking that balance. I think you're finding that balance. And I'm just so proud of the fact you're willing to be vulnerable and share that message. And I think more people need to do that. They just need to, quit the charade, just get out there, be real, and start the new decade with that mindset and take care of yourself. I mean, take the time to take care of yourself. We had such a great time this weekend up here in Enchantment, and we want to thank everyone at the Enchantment Resort. You guys were amazing. I mean, especially the spa staff. You guys are totally, totally awesome. We had so much fun there today. And all the goodies you guys sent us in our rooms, and the champagne with the strawberries and the bottle of wine, and you guys just treat us like royalty, and we will be back many, many, many times. This is one of our favorite getaways. So thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody, and we'll see you here in a few days, all right? God bless. Okay, I'd like to close tonight's podcast with a thank you and a Merry Christmas to our good friends at Stockett Tile and Granite, where your project is our priority. I'll tell you what, I have known this family for about 40 years, and they have done so many amazing projects for my clients with a whole assortment of different builders, but always the top-notch builders. I mean, this company is nothing but quality. And I've known Dave Stockett, like I said, for about 40 years. He's been on our Spain trip, our Italy trip, and he's truly a great, great friend. And they're doing our demonstration kitchen at the Candelaria Design Offices. And I just want to thank you all and wish you all a Merry Christmas. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We encourage you to write a review, screenshot it, and share it with your friends. Please instant message it to me and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights to inspiring living next week.